Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Antoine Fuqua's new HBO Sports documentary, The Day Sports Stood Still. And this documentary focuses on the impact that the past year has had on sports and how sports have impacted back on what our society is going through. Obviously, it starts with COVID and the shutting down of sports, and you get to see into the lives of these athletes who have to quarantine and be away from their family, their children. You see some of them lose family members to illness. You have a lot of the film focuses on Chris Paul and the NBA player, and you see him struggling being quarantined away from his kids and missing them. You see the impact that the Black Lives Matter movement and the different shootings that have happened and deaths by police, that how they have impacted our society, and not only how that impacted sports, but how athletes have tried to make an impact back and making a statement and really pushing these messages. And there's some really emotional moments throughout this film that you really get a sense of how much of an impact it has on some of these sports figures and sports analysts and sports reporters. And you see this transition from closing down to coming out of quarantine to stand up for this movement and standing up for people's rights. And then you have that transition into when things started opening up a bit. And you talked a lot about the NBA bubble and how that worked, and you got to see the inner workings of it, which was pretty interesting and fascinating, how they kept it going. And then you see, as we're slowly creeping back into things, of course at the end they say where all the sports are now. Like, in a couple of days we're going to be going, in about a week we're going to be going back to the baseball season, first full baseball season. But you see all these different athletes, some of them left their sports to go fight for the Black Lives Matter movement. You've seen Mookie Betts standing up, which was interesting, as they had different focus on the different sports of hockey and baseball are primarily white sports, and the NBA as a whole making a stand against what has been happening to people of color in terms of interactions with police. This film is very passionate, and there's a lot of emotion and a lot of fire to it. And that's no surprise. Antoine Fuqua is a very passionate and very talented director. The film, there's definitely times where I feel like the narrative gets a little muddled in exactly what this is supposed to be focusing on, because is this supposed to be just focusing on COVID and the shutting down? And then I felt like it took a huge shift into talking about Black Lives Matter, which obviously is a really impactful thing, but narratively, as things are transitioning between them, it gets a little unfocused. But when you get to the end, it feels like you do see the bigger picture and the whole evolution of this whole entire situation. But this is a really moving and high-quality documentary from a really talented filmmaker. And of course, HBO puts out some really quality content, especially a lot of their documentaries. And I think that this is a really impactful film. And especially for me as a sports fan, I love baseball, I love football, and I definitely love baseball. That's my big sport. And seeing how these athletes dealt with all of the uncertainty and the mystery of what's going to be going on, and it's intriguing, and Fuqua built up that tension in an effective way in this film. And you get all of that. And it hits close to home, as we're all still living through this situation. But I think The Day Sports Stood Still is a special documentary. It's an hour and 25 minutes. I definitely think it's worth checking out on HBO Max. But those are my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.